Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to be showing you how I built this custom Mandalorian helmet in the style of Boba Fett. You can see it's got a lot of weathering, a different color combination than the original Boba Fett, but that's where I took my inspiration. Again, trying to show folks how they can build props at home, not very cheaply, but again with some materials that you have laying around the house perhaps. I will say that it is a long weekend. I decided to take a break from grading papers, and I had promised to put this video together, and I'm even being asked on social media by some old high school friends, Mike, I'm talking to you, about putting this together because he really wants to see this helmet. Again, this is not in the style of the Mandalorian television show. That's the silver shiny Beskar, but this is a battle-worn original style Boba Fett helmet, just with different colors. I'm also going to tell you that it's been a long time building this helmet. It started about 2 years ago, but then I went back to teaching in the classroom after COVID and kind of put things off. But I originally started building with foam, actually, 10mm foam, different kinds of craft foam, and that's a good way to get started. But I wanted to try to test my skills at building a Boba Fett helmet out of cardboard and fiberglass. Again, there are loads of templates and videos that you can watch if you want to get started with foam. It's a really easy way. You can probably less than $40, $50, you can build a nice helmet. Again, you can watch many YouTubers out there, Punished Props, Core Geek, Evil Ted, even the Prop Master. Those are great builds. But we're going to be talking about fiberglass, resin, and cardboard. The reason I chose to go that route is I don't have a 3D printer, and you can build these without a 3D printer, and I know that a lot of people that build with printers, they do just as much work after, as far as sanding down, making it smooth, getting rid of the lines, and also trying to stiffen or toughen up that plastic, because the plastic used in the 3D printing is very brittle. So you do just as much work with a 3D print as you would with cardboard and fiberglass. Again, not to talk anyone out of using 3D printers, it's just an option I did not have, and I decided to go this route. When I transitioned into making fiberglass helmets, I used 2mm cardboard as my stock, and then if I show this to you, you can see some of the lines in here. Again, putting pieces of cardboard together with contact cement, and then again covering with resin and chopped strand fiberglass. That can get a little expensive, but you know, a sheet of 2mm cardboard is less than about $8, and then your fiberglass resin you can get for about $20, and your chopped strand, so still probably looking about $30 to $40 to build this helmet. That doesn't include the earpieces though. I custom built these out of wood first, and then made plastic resin casts, and made this detachable. And this will be where the viewfinder, the rangefinder goes. But I'll show you some of that towards the end of our video. Again, if you wanted to practice this or transition into using fiberglass and resin and chopped strand and cardboard, there are lots of good videos as well. Bladen Props is really good for the painting, but Bucci Boy, old videos, Serial Killer, very like 10-year-old videos. Aaron Warren has a video about 6 years old. Again, just really good step-by-step how to build these on video. And then you'll see also on the visor, I just want to cover this real quick before we get started on the narration. I cut out a welding visor, and then I used these acorn nuts to hold that in place. That was a technique I picked up from Demon Dog online. So again, I'm going to go ahead and narrate over some of my still photos, show you how I built this step by step. Again, I appreciate you following and watching the videos, and hopefully you find something of interest here that could help you in your future builds. So your first step, you want to cut out your patterns. So you want to trace your paper patterns onto your 2mm cardboard or whatever size that you decide to go with. I use Wizard of Flight patterns. You can download those from Mandalorian Merc's website, as well as a video that I watched was Aaron Warren. He did a really good time-lapse video of building his helmet. So you want to cut those out. I also want to mention that you want to use a very sharp blade. It's better to make multiple passes, maybe 2, 3, 4 times on your line that you're cutting to get an accurate smooth cut than to try to go through 2 millimeters all at once. So again, just want to make sure you cut those out, make sure they're accurate. You're going to build a base. This is a form that's actually going to give your helmet shape. You won't be using this after you've actually formed the lower half of your helmet. You'll discard this, but you want to make sure that this is the right size. I did not have the right size. I had to add 10 millimeters on either side. So when you look at this image, you put the second layer of cardboard around that base. You'll notice there's some paper on the inside where I added that 10 millimeters, that 10 millimeter strip of cardboard. You want to use water. You want to moisten your cardboard on the both sides as you're putting it around that form and shaping it, because you don't want to crease the cardboard. You just want to have it damp enough so you can work with it. A little bit of pressure, you can actually get it into shape. And then if you can even use tape or any kind of Velcro band, strap, string, something to keep some tension on it as it's drying. And once it dries, it'll keep that shape. I marked my T-visor, and then on the next step, you can see I went ahead and did the mandibles. So you cut out the cheeks, and you also see the key slot in the back. That's a very, very good detail to add to your helmet. But again, you want to make sure that you're constantly checking for fit and size, because these cheeks will be very, very close to your cheeks when you put it on, so you want to make sure you have enough room to put your head into the helmet. Now we move into making the dome structure. So this is a temporary structure as well, so you don't want to actually fix it with a lot of glue. You just want to hold it in place with a couple of dabs. I was using contact cement, like I said earlier, but again, this is a temporary structure. You want to make sure that you put that in place. Now is also a good time. Try your helmet on a little bit just to make sure that your head does fit in here. What you'll do is you have about 3 sections on the pattern, so you want to cut those out. Again, make sure that they're accurate, very, very smooth edges. And using the same technique of water, you just want to moisten those as they start at the visor and work their way up to the top of the dome. I used masking tape to hold it in place, and then again when it dried, I went back and put in contact cement. To be honest, I probably could have gotten away with using super glue or another type of glue, because again this will be covered with resin and it'll be hard. I just choose to do things the hard way sometimes. But anyway, the contact cement work held it in place with the masking tape. Also here on this image you'll see the dome structure is still there. This is before I removed it, but I started adding little tiny strips of cardboard to reinforce those the dome itself, just because I didn't want that to come apart when I removed the temporary dome structure. So I added a few more in there, and now we are getting very close to cutting out the T-visor for the front. You'll also notice I put little pieces of paper, circles of paper on top. The pointed edges of the dome started to fray and come undone, so I wanted to make sure that I had a smooth base to put my resin on. You'll trace your T-visor on the inside, and again you want to make sure that that's accurate now, because once you cut this cardboard you don't want to have to go back and rebuild it if you make a mistake in measurements. Once it's cut out, I actually put like a coating. I use like a Minwax coating on top of this just to give it a little stiffness, but then I moved directly into putting in the polyester resin, the fiberglass chop strand. So again, this is a Bondo resin, and in the next image here you can see the chop strand itself, the fiberglass on the inside. I chose to do that on the inside to make it as durable as I could. Later I wound up putting some extra pieces on the outside of the dome. You'll notice I also have some drip marks. We're going to sand those away, but again, trying to make it as stiff as possible. When it comes to sanding, I started with 100 grit and then went up to about a 180 at this point. Just trying to knock down some of those ridges. You're going to go back in with a lot of body filler, sandable primer, glaze coats, all those things to make it a smooth helmet. And that's what we did here. If anybody's worked in auto body detailing or body repair, you should recognize the Bondo body filler. You can also see the screws that I covered in the mandible itself on the T-visor. And again, that's a technique I picked up from Demon Dog online on how to install the visor. And right now I thought was the best time to put those screws in place. And again, you can see just the circles where they were covered with the body filler. You can get a better shot here. This is the glazing putty that went on top. And again, you're just trying to sand it down. I wound up moving up to a higher grit to make it a little smoother. And then I have my sandable primer. The sandable primer will be taken down, and then I will install the visor to test for fit. You can see the key slot, again sanding it down. Continue sanding. And you don't want to leave open spots, so your sandable primer, you don't want to, you want to make sure that you have enough primer before you start putting base coats down. That was also a slight mistake that I had made. Also, you want to be very, very careful here. You'll notice at the very edge of the T-visor, close to the ear, those mandibles will break if you put too much pressure on them. So you want to have lots of super glue and baking soda ready. That's a really good filler for that to fix any cracks. So when I went to painting, I used a base coat of silver. That was my first layer. And then I went back, added some masking fluid, and then painted with a gray color. That'll give me my two tones there. And again, using a technique that I saw many people doing, Aaron Warren, as well as Blade and Props does a really good tutorial on masking and painting the original Boba Fett helmet. I used those techniques to add that masking fluid, tracing the battle damage, and then again just layering it, multiple colors on top of each other. I will say this, give yourself plenty of time to have your paint dry. You want to make sure you're using the same brands of paint, but at the same time that you are waiting at least 24 hours for that to dry. I found that I was not taking enough time between coats, and when I removed some of my masking at the very end, I ripped off multiple layers. Not too much that you can notice it, but again, save yourself the time, energy, and hard work that you put in by waiting an extra day for your paint to dry. You also don't want to leave open spots. Again, in your sanding, your places down, you want to make sure that you are covering with primer before you start painting. And again, moving into the mandibles using the same technique, masking multiple coats, use different colors of red, and we got that helmet finished. Mandibles are gray, the cheeks are, dark brown, and then we have a beige color for the helmet. You'll notice the earpieces aren't there just yet, but here you can see that I added those plastic earpieces. Again, the originals were made with wood. I used silicone molds and then poured plastic resin into those molds. I'll show you how I did that on another video. So hopefully you stayed till the very end. You got to see how I put this helmet together. Again, in a later video, I will be covering how I made these plastic earpieces, originally carving them from wood, making silicone molds, and then pouring plastic resin. I'll also be covering the aluminum flat stock that I was going to use for the rangefinder. I'll probably wind up ordering one that's hollow so that I could run electronics through it. I also wanted to give recognition to War Masters Workshop, Mandalorian Mercs. They have a lot of videos that show different ways to make helmets as well, using Sentra, but also incorporating that fiberglass and chop strand resin. So again, hopefully you stay till the end, and I am really, really hoping that you're inspired to try to build one of these on your own. And I look forward to making more videos in the future.